Hey everyone, so we're going to unbox a photo or a Lightbox. Unbox a Lightbox. This is used for usually seasonal affective disorder. Seasonal affective disorder is when during times of fall and winter the individual starts to feel melancholy, reactive, depressive. It's a form of depression. I'd say it's a light form of depression that happens in Chicago a lot. It doesn't have to be major depression where you're withdrawing from society, can't get an appetite going, can't get out of bed. It's not that bad. Seasonal affective disorder can just be a mood affectation where patients kind of fall apart during the winter months. One of the easy ways to take care of that would be either taking herbs, having psychotherapy, seeing a doctor or psychiatrist for medications, or an alternative is Lightbox. And just happen to have one right here. Lightbox is a full spectrum light that reproduces what you get from the sun. So like in Chicago, if we don't see sun for a few months, some people tend to be a little depressed. I have fibromyalgia, so sometimes when wintertime comes, in addition to having pain and trigger points, if I happen to be missing sunlight, it'll throw another trigger into that. I don't need an extra trigger, so it's kind of cool to have this thing in the background. So the way it works is that when your retinal cells, the cells on the back of the eyeball, there's rods and cones. Typically that helps you see during the day and see at night. It helps you distinguish colors. And some of the signals that those rods and cones get in the retina, they go to retinal ganglion cells, and then they stimulate this track in the brain that gives you interpretation of color. Now if you if you lose that in the wintertime, sometimes the brain interprets that as it's winter, and then if you're on the border of depression, it'll put you into depression. If you're usually not depressed, it can give you a little taste of it. So that's why we all shoot for going on vacation to places where it's sunny. And this, not that this is vacation, but this will give you a little bit of a response. So by giving you the by trying to experience this at least 30 minutes to maybe an hour a day would give you that same feeling as the brain thinking you're in summertime. So I'm not sure how this works, but here's an on and off button, and that's pretty much it. So I don't know so you don't really notice anything. These lights are probably brighter than the lights that I'm using for filming this video. And again, it's just full spectrum. The way light waves work is that you go from like the blue end of the spectrum to the red end of the spectrum. Blue usually is shorter wavelengths. That means the energy carried in the light as it is perceived by the eye is a bit more active than red, which is longer wavelength. And that's why it's thought that you can use also blue light, specifically blue light, to turn on or reset your circadian rhythm. Now the studies are out as far as circadian rhythm in blue, and also because if you just use a blue light instead of a full spectrum, you might be getting way too much energy in your eyes, and you could cause retinal damage. So you don't want to injure the retina. At the same time, you want to stimulate the retina a bit to tell the brain, fool the brain into thinking it's not winter and there's a lot of sun out. And you know, we as humans, when it's really sunny outside, you want to take a look and say, wow, that's cool. Just like nature, even if you're in the city, when you see something of a summit or an ocean, you say just for a second, the body is drawn into that. The mind is drawn into that to say, wow, that's nice, because we have that affinity to, it's in the DNA to give reward feedback to the brain when you experience those kind of summits or those kind of environments. Well, it makes the species continue, but that also give you if you live in Chicago, a little bit of a problem. Also, if you're a third shift worker, it'll give you a problem because if you avoid seeing the sun, you can get by with your shift work, but eventually something happens where your circadian rhythm's off or depression starts to hit. So usually this is not supposed to be right in front of you because you will get damage. It's supposed to be off to the side. I can still see the lights on the to the side here, just like I'm seeing my projection lights. So this kind of experience, and as far as distance, the idea is that it's somewhere in your vicinity. Now, this, it'd be nice if it was up in the air somewhere, and there's a timer on this thing, I believe. Yeah, 15, 30, 45, and 60 minutes. And it also has an ionic something or other. I'm not sure what that is. It probably tries to convert ozone. There's a theory about ozone, but I'm not gonna use this time to explain the ozone therapy. But I think this is a nice thing to have in the sides. I got it for Christmas, so I'm not sure how much it costs. But if you go on Amazon, it's about 60 to 90 bucks. If you do buy something like this, it has to be 10,000 lux. Lux is a measurement of intensity of light, and again, it has to be full spectrum. If you go for just blue, the studies are out. I think NASA did a lot of great studies on blue lights because the guys that were orbiting space would have 24/7 exposure to sunlight and or darkness, so they kind of screwed everything up. If you work in a factory, it's really bright. If you go to a church, it's really dark. So there are things in culture that have been supportive of the supposedly time period of the day that you're supposed to be there. So again, it's just circadian rhythm and seasonal changes. So I think this is a nice find for the price. It's kind of like experimenting with St. John's wort. If you have depression and you experiment with St. John's wort, as long as the depression is minimal, the St. John's wort, if you use it properly 3 times a day, will eventually, hopefully, get you past the reactive depression and making you feel better versus Zoloft. I don't have a problem with Zoloft. I used that before myself, but it hits heavy, and you have the potential of having side effects. Here, the only side effect potentially is, and it hasn't been studied that well yet, the damage to the retina. But short of that, it's 90 bucks. It's about the same price as a month, 2 months of St. John's wort. So, or a couple months of a good quality St. John's wort. But I think that'd be a nice extra versus going straight to medications. Or going straight to a vacation. If you can't afford a vacation, try to invest. So I'm going to get a little more therapy now and try to get through the rest of my Christmas day.